technical solutions to fix cultural problems. So I told us that you need to cut because of the optics and the signal that you can't continue to live large while the people continue to suffer. I mean, what we need to push back every day for, we need leadership that mirrors integrity.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me today on another edition of your favorite show, Podcast Unfiltered. I'm so glad that you're here. Thank you for the likes. Thank you for the subscription. We encourage you, if this is your first time coming across this podcast channel, hey, what are you waiting for? Please subscribe, like, and share so that you can be part of this community as we constantly engage in discussions about democracy and development in Africa and beyond. Today, we will be discussing issues related to budgeting and development. Yearly, Nigeria budgets trillions of naira ostensibly to finance national development. Just December 2018 of 2024, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu presented before the National Assembly a budget of about 50 trillion naira for fiscal year 2025. That represented an 81% rise compared to proposed budget of 27.50 trillion for fiscal year 2024. But indeed, for many Nigerians, the question remains how those budgeted funds are spent. Indeed, there is a near unanimity amongst Nigerians that the yearly budget approval processes is only as good as a religious festival or a New Yam festival, if I can put it as such. Budgeting in Nigeria, in a way, for some has become symptomatic of the corruption that the country faces, both at the federal and sub-national level. Today, I have joining me in the studio someone who is well versed on the issues of budgeting and transparency as well as accountability, not just in Nigeria, but indeed across the continent. I'm pleased to be joined for today's episode by Mr. Oluseun Onigbinde, who is a co-founder of BudgiT Nigeria. Today, Seun will help us unpack issues related to the budget process in Nigeria and some of the key issues that usually comes up when the budget process comes around and indeed in the course of the implementation. Seun, thank you for joining me.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure being here today.
Thank you. Thank you. Do you want to just tell us more about yourself? I know Nigerians know you very well, but I do have audience, that goes beyond the four walls of Nigeria. Who is Seun Onigbinde? How did you come about the idea of budget? That's a nice play of words.
Budget IT. So people say budget it. But we started in 2011. Prior to that, I've shown a lot of interest in development work. So I was running a small climate change outfit with a friend called Sukomi Abubiji, but it wasn't working out. So I was just by my desk in First Bank, and I was just thinking through what was I going to do? What's the new idea that's going to pop up here for me? And the thing that just booked in my head was, okay, I could do budget it. I could budget. If I got a budget for you then, it was at the hackathon that was organized by Corporation of, which was led by Bosun Tijani. Bosun Tijani is Nigeria's Minister of Communications, Innovations and Digital Economy right now. And he was the one that said, okay, we like this idea, come for the hackathon. And we came up for the hackathon, we came second. And that's how the story began from there. And the idea was simple, even though the idea has taken different lives now. But the idea simply was, how do we ensure that everyday citizens understand public finance, public budgets, and how to deal with government accountable on the level of that idea? So we were clear-minded that we wanted to simplify public finance, wanted to show them a pathway to accountability. And that kicked off in 2011, and we've been 14 years in it now.
Oh, wow.
And
You guys are no spring chickens then.
not at all. The time we like a startup, we had to remove that that tag and then accept that we are now a non-profit organization.
Fantastic. And I must commend, I've been following your publications as well as some of your media appearances. But Shehu, let's jump into it right away. And the first question that I would like to ask you is this. Would you agree that Nigeria's budgeting system is broken? Do we have a broken budget system in Nigeria?
It's very broken. We have a budget system that has problems on multiple fronts. And the major problem is that when you say something is budgeted, it is layered on something, and what it layers on is planning, which means this is how I'm trying to plan myself in the short term, in the medium term, and in the long term. And if this is how I'm planning myself, this is how I'm going to allocate resources towards that kind of plan. So if I say I need 25 million students who are out of school, I need them to be in school, and this is the level of literacy and numeracy level that I expect of them, I'm focused on that. But what you get is that nobody is budgeting according to a plan. The bigger problem is that Nigeria's budget is it's closer to spending than actual planning, whereas the budget should be a product of planning. And so because of that, that's why you see our development it's haphazard, it's understated, it's
If there is any
underwhelming.
development
If there's
at
any
all.
one of them, because we're not thinking through 5, 10, 15 years. Everybody just comes in with the agenda and runs the agenda, and just focuses on the agenda. And that's the problem that I see when we talk about the budget itself. And so for me, it's clear about the fact that the budget is not tied to planning. And we've gone through that process where there was a time I remember Okonjo-Iweala, when she was the Minister of Finance, she fought out that the budget office should be under the Ministry of Finance. That I cannot be doing finance in this way and budgeting is going this way. So we push back and say, well, no, the budget team should be with the planning team. So we've gone through this dichotomy of, is it going to be with finance, going to be with planning? But what they actually should be in the standard system is that it should be with planning. You plan, you set up a 5 to 10, 15, 20-year plan, you leave the budget to ministry that. What we get now is that we get the budget as extension of interest. For example, if you as borrowing as a connect in, let's say, China, to import solar street lights into the country, and you import like 10,000 solar street light poles, with solar lights that flicker and that will go off in like another 3-6 months, you will practically find a friend in the National Assembly or in the presidency or in the ministry to put installation of solar street light in a community that doesn't need solar street light. The community needs, maybe I've seen communities that they have a primary school. Primary school is the overwhelmed, they want a secondary school because the students have to walk another 30-40 minutes to be able to access a secondary school facility. That is their pressing need. But nobody goes back to the community and says, what's your pressing need? Everybody's looking at someone decides at the top that because I have this specific interest, this is what gets into the budget. So beyond the budget not being a instrument of planning, it's also been an extension of personal interest. Because a lot of people just look at the budget and say, okay, what am I doing that can insert into this? And you do that in partnership with civil servants and different bureaucratic needs. That's a big problem.
No, thank you, Shehu. And I really like the way you put it that our budget is more about spending. It's not so much about planning.
Yep.
And I think this age-old issue with Nigeria remains. I remember back in the days of General Yakubu Gowon, who is repeated to have said that Nigeria's problem is they have to spend money.
Yeah.
But the point you just raised brings me to my next question, especially the role of the National Assembly. One of BudgiT's the analysis of the 2020, the current 2025 budget indicated that the National Assembly inserted a total of almost 12,000
projects
into the current budget, and that culminated in I think in about over 6 trillion or so in the budget. Now, 2005, 2006, and one of the key issues back then was the back and forth between President Obasanjo and the then National Assembly. Because when he presented the budget, they took it and, changed the figures and so on. I think that's the genesis of, this idea of inserting the so-called constituency project into budget. So my question for you now is, how did these members, how did they come up, identifying that they should be projects that should be inserted into the budget? And
you're right on that, because I think that contestation has always been there, and even going all the way to Jonathan, even up to Buhari. I think Buhari at some point said, you know what, the budget was passed in an haphazard manner. So sometimes he waited to even June. By that June, there is no budget for that year. And all you are just doing is you're paying salaries.
Buhari had his own peculiar issues
too. And even Jonathan had those issues too. When the budget was delayed until May, until June. The reason is just because of this back and forth with the National Assembly. And I think it's not peculiar to Nigeria. I mean, I was doing some study and I figured out that Brazil also has the same kind of situation, especially when you run this supersized executive power. The National Assembly wants to push back on the basis of that. The way we run it in Nigeria is that previously, the National Assembly had a cap. There was a respectable cap of 100 billion naira. So whatever you were going to put into the budget was going to be within 100 billion naira. That was the plan. But everything, it doesn't mean
this is separate from the National Assembly's budget.
The budget. So you get, apart from National Assembly, around 150 billion, then you get another 100 billion, which is constituency project, or what they call zone intervention projects there. Now, once in a while, you find a few projects tickle into the main budget that were inserted, but we're not mainstream at large scale like this. It was until the 8th Assembly, which is the assembly before the current one. The Lawan Bajabi Assembly, that it became extremely mainstream. That people, now put different amounts in different locations in the budget. There was no restraint, there was no guardrail. Because now Buhari said, I wanted the budget signed by the first day of the year. So what led to the delay of the budget is that it was always that back and forth. Now we've compromised proper budgeting structure and planning for speed, because we want to move fast. And the reality is that the budget is a legal document. It's an appropriation act. So, and that's why even for someone like me, even as much as people will say, oh, National Assembly powers are limited, but I said no. If the budget is also part of the lawmaking process, you have to agree. The National Assembly has the constitution until otherwise stated, or to maybe Supreme Court gives another interpretation. National Assembly has wide powers or restrained powers when it comes to the budget, because what the executive presents, it's a bill. But the thing I always say is that with great power comes with great responsibility. And you understand that I need to use this power for public good, not just to benefit myself from a public perspective. So those are the issues. Then that's when you now start seeing different items getting in the budget that has no meaning with the people. Or the federal government has no business with. Or even the agencies that are delivering those projects have this not within their mandate. So you have an agency that's supposed to be like a school in Southeast, maybe also G River, Federal Cooperative College, G River, and it's building.
Our G River always comes up in the budget every year.
Because it seems they're building a small racket.
Sea never dry.
A small racket that they have some understanding. And I've seen a document, I've been called it before, where an MD writes a member of the National Assembly asking them to cite constituency project in their agency. Because obviously there's some untoward thing happening in there, because they will do the procurement, they will get the funding. So somehow, even if some little bit of crumbs are falling on their laps, this is the kind of scenario we have now, which is not supposed to be. National Assembly, in my own view, is abusing its appropriation powers. And because of that, you have, I mean, if you look at the country, Nigeria, I mean, has borrowed billions or trillions of naira in the last 10 years. And you ask yourself, if I drive through the whole of southwest Nigeria, apart from the Lagos Ibadan Express Road, you can hardly find a decent southwest road to drive through because we're not focused. The budget is and you know the funny thing, if I bring 100 projects to the budget, and National Assembly brings another 100, the 100 of National Assembly gets more priority than the 100 other projects from the executive because National Assembly member will put a lot of pressure on the bureaucracy that their own projects must go through the procurement first. And so at the end of the day, the executive continues to ration the capital allocation that he has. So a road that is supposed to get 100 billion naira allocation for this year gets 20 billion. The next year he gets another 20 billion. In 3 years, the contractor comes back and says, oh, creation. The road is now more expensive. So a project that should cost maybe 200 billion suddenly becomes 800 billion because you fragmentation of over time. So those are the issues. And somehow we have not sat down and reflected properly about how are we supposed to engineer development. So you have 52 trillion naira budget, you have a capital project of maybe 28 trillion naira. But you're asking yourself, the projects that will be done in this fair, are they things that matter to the people? You know, those are the issues.
I think you're right, and you know, if I mean, I may say also that while it is not peculiar to Nigeria, I mean, you cited the example of Brazil, where the National Assembly, you know, cites project or makes some direct intervention in the budgeting process. It may be more of a missed opportunity for us because if there was, you know, truth and sincerity in all of this, it probably may be a means of activating citizenship amongst Nigerians. You know, I made reference to the work I did some years back, pushing the idea of constituency outreach amongst members of parliament in Nigeria, because then it was really the thing, and you know, we went around helping members to site open constituency offices, train their constituency staff, and all of that. But you know, all along we realized that these guys were not very serious about that. So I think maybe we can look at it from that angle, that it's potentially a way that members of the National Assembly can engage citizens in the budgeting process, if we talk about participatory budgeting processes and so on. But as you said, we see the Oji River issue, we see one town event center being built in Zonkwa and all of that, and you ask, are these the priority of the people? So tell me, do you think it is for the reasons you just explained that we are now hearing of this so-called renewed hope infrastructure project that President Tinubu, according to the Minister for Aviation, Festus Keyamo, says the new Murtala Mohammed International Airport is going to be financed through the renewed hope infrastructure project? Because is it not alien to the appropriation, that fund?
There are many things that are alien that National Assembly has looked away from, and it's an indictment on their role within the democratic space. And this is manifesting in different forms. One is that you see that the executive is trying to use extra budgetary means to fund some of those projects. It first started with the tax credits. I'm supposed to pay taxes to the government. You tell me, don't pay taxes for 10 years.
Go do this.
Go do this road. Now, which means the taxes possibly that should have been shared by the three arms of government, because those taxes don't belong to the federal government alone. You have concessioned it to a private individual. And I remember then that we had a lot of pushback that this is not bad if it's selective, if it's properly structured. Then suddenly NNPC was interested. And it was just 2 days ago, I was reading the news that NNPC says they are pulling back from the tax credit system. Because everybody knew that what was the math behind these amounts to say this is the amount of taxes I'm not paying and I'm supposed to deliver this kind of infrastructure? Um, so National Assembly decided to abdicate its responsibility in that regard. The second one is this quasi fund that the executive has created called the Renewed Hope Infrastructure Fund. National Assembly is supposed to have oversight in that. Because
It's a lot of money.
if they are savings, a lot of money. Because now the federal government and the CBN, they are not distributing every single earning that we are getting from oil. And also from the taxes, because because of the devaluation effect, it's put so much money in the hands of the federal government and the states, especially for funds that are being received from the oil, because that is priced in USD, and some of the custom payments that are being received. Now, there's a bit of understanding about the amount that will be shared. So the federal government has been plowing back some of this money into that renewed hope infrastructure fund. Some of the money also. So the question is there supposed to be like a congressional oversight on that kind of account? Because it's when you create that in a vehicle that is much more structured, which is could be like the NSIA. So you could say, okay, we'll give all of that money. Business that has a law, it has a board, he has a structure. All of that money could have gone to the Sovereign Wealth Investment Authority, and they are able to much more handle it, much more manage it. But now you leave it into a fund. Who manages the fund? Who is the director of the fund? We even have MOFI, which is the Ministry of Finance Incorporated. That so you could have structured something that is much more open and transparent. Because either funding for the Calabar Road, the Lagos Calabar Coastal Road, or this Sokoto Badagry, or this, these are humongous projects, trillions of naira. Nobody, and all of that is not being filtered through the budget. There's a big crisis there in my opinion, but that's all the National Assembly to push back.
Wow, thank you. Now, let me take you to, because you just made reference to savings being made from currency devaluation, removal of subsidy, and so on. There's so much. One of the things that the current government is always quick to refer to as a success point over the last 2 years is that the states now get more money is going to the states. But are we seeing the same level of scrutiny that the federal budget is getting at the state level? Because if we talk about the National Assembly abdicating its responsibility, of its oversight responsibility at the national level, is there any capacity? Do you see any capacity within the state's legislatures to really oversight this fresh money or additional money going to the states?
It's a bit challenging because we try, but I will say we're also limited. Nigeria is like 36 nations in one. And let's be honest, there are many countries in Africa, the Liberia, the Sierra Leone, the Gambia, whose population is not up to a state in Nigeria. The challenge is we do the state of state report every year, but that looks at things from a much more high level, which is more fiscal sustainability of states. Now we want to drill down more into the transparency, accountability, and efficiency use. I don't think we've not had the resources to back that. And I think it's also a failure of institutions because civil society, even though we try to hug these opportunities and extend our legitimacy, it's not our primary responsibility. We're supposed to be a support mechanism for some of these things. Like you mentioned, that should have been the responsibility of the state legislature. But we know over the years what has happened to the state legislature. They had autonomy. Nobody was willing to operationalize that the same way you had with the local government system. The Supreme Court even passed a ruling to say give local government their money till date. That ruling of the Supreme Court, which is over a year, nothing has happened to it. Because obviously, which is why a friend of mine will always say, legality is the construct of the powerful. The people would, if that law had to do with poor people, in fact, the ink would not have
dry before it's implemented.
Yeah, before it's implemented. But now we have over a year And that's the problem we have. It's a failure of institutions. And you now have citizens, society have to step in into that regard. We're doing something in budget that we should launch maybe by end of the month,
Okay.
called the Fiscal Fellows Program, which where we are now getting states to form, young people to form cells within states to be able to interrogate public finance data within respective states. Because one thing that budget has done that's been amazing is, and the World Bank also supported in that direction, is to make sure that states now publish their budgets, their budget implementation reports, and their audited reports. At least 33 out of 36 states do that annually. So I think, an exception of Lagos has always been notorious with transparency, and also possibly Rivers that has its own current challenges right now. But most states are up to that, because also it also become the yardstick for them to be able to access development funding. So we want to make sure that we can interrogate 36 states' finances day by day, month by month. So what we wanted to do is let us get people who are residents of the state, who are citizens of the state, and let them have the ability to, and train them. They didn't have the ability to read financial statements, analyze it, come up with their own communicate, and continuously be able to appraise government and do better on this and do better on this and do better on that. Because I think that's the only way we have. There's too much attention on the federal government. And as you said, most states are, I mean, if compared to what they got in 2023, a state like Oyo was getting around 8 billion. It's getting around 16, 17 billion now.
Wow,
Per
that's
month.
double.
For double, from fact. And you have states like Rivers, I mean, Akwa Ibom, Delta, that clock into around 28, 30 billion naira a month. You know, Lagos State revenue is about 1.2 trillion naira now annually. So which means it gets an average of 100 billion naira a month. So obviously, there's so much cash on the hands of the state government.
And more will be coming, with this new tax law that has been put in place.
Yeah, because the federal government put the states ahead, and I don't even know why it did that, because states got more incentive in that tax structure. And don't forget that there are still even savings that's been kept aside just because of managing inflation. So maybe as the elections come on board, some of those will start being popped into the system. And those are the problems we continue to face.
Well, I'll still come to that last point. You just raised about election and budgeting. I do have that point for us to go through here. But to what you made reference to, the report you guys the budget fellows, fiscal fellows program. I think that's spot on. And I will go back again to the point I made earlier on, that maybe it's a missed moment for the National Assembly in terms of activating citizenship and activating participation in budgeting amongst their constituents. So doing that also, I think it's a way of fostering this idea of a participatory budgeting, particularly by people who live within those communities, who can report. I see the reports people post from time to time. This road is supposed to be done by so this is the level of implementation and so on. But the question I have about that is so that to give visibility to these fellows in the communities, so that whatever they find, whatever reports they come up with, as the participation of the locals, because through that, I think accountability can improve that for such.
There are plans, and I think that's what we're clear about, that it has to be local. I mean, we can, because we are not from Benue, so I think if we want to analyze Benue finances now, let someone in Benue do that properly. And also, a lot of legitimacy also happens with local media. Most of the things you find maybe on Punch, The Nation, there are some local media, like in Oyo State now, maybe Tribune, and some of them are even digital, like Oyo from Oyo, so I know you do about OyoInsight.com. Something like that have a lot of legitimacy with people, or even local radio programming where you have OAPs that have this influence on discussion within the state. For example, in Oyo State again, Oriyomi Hamzat. So Agidigbo. So you want to be able to also get them to tap into those environments, because you could do that analysis and put it on The Nation Punch and just get lost with normal news cycle issues of Nigeria. But you also want to be sure that it's engaging the local issues, the local framework, the local media framework, and that's like the target we have. Things are a bit difficult within the state level. Holding government accountable. A lot of people come at great harm to people. Because I've been saying that, I mean, I was reading the news, someone in Delta was complaining about the road.
In Agbo.
Yeah, and the local government chairman started threatening him, directly in Delta State. So those are the kind of challenges I know that we might face. But we want to kick off with gradually people who believe that maybe they studied economics, maybe they're enthusiastic about public finance, and we train them, and so that they're able to analyze it from like a very objective perspective. So the good they will tell, the bad they will explain, the ugly they will say, and gradually they start integrating themselves with the local media. And the next phase will now just be now connecting with local issues.
Okay.
So the government can also say what are the pressing issues for communities, and why is this not in the budget? I mean, so that also starts engendering some more of participatory budgeting at the state level. Because whatever problem you think you have at the federal level, you have worse. It's worse at the state level. It's more like the governor just points and kills. Okay, I want this one, I want that one. It's supposed to be framed on some level of planning.
Or they give 50 million to someone who has done. I mean, okay, I don't want to. I'm a football fan, so I love what the girls did and even what the basketball team did also. But I ask, this money is there. Why don't you have 50 million to build basketball courts and so on in different
football academies?
So anyway, I digress. BudgiT is always making very good news, I should say. But of recent, one of your reports was cited by the US Embassy in Nigeria.
Oh, yeah.
What's your take on how frontal that was, if I can, hearing in another sovereign's domestic issue?
Honestly, a lot of media people ask us to talk about it, and we try to decline. Because we said, one, these are non-new issues, so it's been in the media. So if I don't want to be, because US Embassy now spoke about it, and now we now start getting super excited about that. I like it. I mean, they've been doing that. If anybody had paid attention to the US Embassy platform, their Twitter, and they always do Transparency Tuesday, where they spotlight organizations or leaders who are doing work in the transparency, accountability, civic space. So maybe that issue just became highly spotlighted. And now
in a very charged political season.
Yeah, and I felt it was good. I mean, under the table, I liked it. If I rise above that, feeling like, okay, I don't want to be caught up in this narrative that we are maybe like stooges, extensions of these entities, because I mean, we won't lie, a chunk of our funding comes from not just the West but from the US. So I like it. It shook the Nigerian government system because you have a lot of money. Now have people who are taking on reckless decisions, and you have governments now spending billions. Bauchi did it. Oyo is about to do 63 billion
to renovate Agodi house.
Now, we are not certain that anybody's going to stay there. These days, most governors prefer to stay in their private residences. And Agodi, I know your state is interesting because, unlike Lagos, where the office and the house of the governor is the same compound, the office is separate from the residence because of the colonial arrangement in those days. And now, since Ajimobi, everybody stayed in their permanent house. It was like Hala, I think, was the last person who was in that place. So I'm not saying don't renovate, but if there was this gold rush of public that everybody has found, if someone finds 63 billion to renovate the building, that there is no certainty of occupancy. Yeah, I struggle with that. Even the one in Odogu, I'm also spending billions on that. The big Daniel, it was on the hilltop, they built the presidential one, it was nice. At the end of the day, the governor lives in his house in the we commit some people to the office almost every day.
Well, I mean, since you're from your state, there is a certain notable individual from your state who will remain on, whose name will remain unmentioned. I say he just as we say in Nigeria, just opened his new house.
Oh,
The White House is a joke compared to what I've seen on Twitter. So, to your point, if he ends up running, winning, who knows?
you can't leave that place. You can't spend because I know him. I still most time I'm in Ibadan. I stay in his hotel.
You should ask for a chalet in that place now.
And I always see him in the hotel.
Okay.
Yeah. And so and every time I ask, why is the minister stay in the hotel? They say, oh, he's building he's refurbishing his house or building an area.
No, that's no refurbishment.
So when I saw that, I'm like, wow. But he's a rich man. But we're just looking at the appropriateness of that in these times.
Yeah.
We have to be. I mean, people are going through a whole lot in Nigeria.
A lot.
Yeah.
So that brings me to this concept of cost of governance. It's used a lot in Nigeria. But when people like you, who are fiscal experts, talk about cost of governance, poor masses like us, we get lost. We say, what are these people talking about? So my question really is, can you break that big grammar concept down, to ordinary person's level of understanding? What does that mean in Nigeria's context?
So there, in my way, I look at it from different brackets. There are some that they are not huge relatively, but they are huge in terms of how they signal to the society. So if the president chooses to buy, let's say, 20 cars now, let's just make an assumption, and each car maybe costs 200 million naira. That's technically you bought 4 billion naira. 4 billion naira in the size of our overhead is not huge. Or in terms of the budget of running 50 something trillion is not huge. But it sends a huge. So when people say cost of governance, I want to be always clear that there's some cost of governance that you need to cut because of the optics and the signaling. That you can't continue to live large while the people continue to suffer. I mean, it was Obi that said, we can't continue to suffer while some people decide to feast. I don't think I get the words right, but it's trying to make an analogy that the country itself, there has to be some solidarity in the context of this socioeconomic crisis that the country is facing. And we don't see that from the president. The president bought this amazing car, they bought plenty cars for the states, they're spending billions on trips, they even renovated the VP's house with billions, and that's given 21 billion for VP's house. It's given a blank check to state governors to also do the same. But there are also other hidden costs of government, apart from that, which I will call the overhead costs, which I think you need to trim so that you can signal well to society that we are all together in this situation. There's not the cost of governance. I think the biggest cost of governance is in capital expenditure side, where there's a lot of inflation of capital projects that do not give opportunity for the government to optimize public resources. And I guess that's my own biggest place where I see if you want to draw down the cost of governance, go in for procurement reform, go in for procurement transparency. But if you don't, and it starts from the budget, because by the time you're talking in one project in the budget, maybe a road is in the budget, then you go and start dragging with procurement. Because, the food is prepared in procurement.
So Sean, how can this procurement transparency, how can it be hardwired, into the budgeting process? I know we have the public procurement, we have the PPP, whatever, BP, and so
code
on.
of conduct rule. You have
Yes.
To be honest with you, it's about signaling from the political leadership. I tell people the culture of service around the political leadership is extremely important. If people feel that it's an all-comers affair, it's free for all, it will be the same approach. Maybe, and I think it's clear that that's what we need. Because, I mean, the way people treat governance these days is simply that Kenyan, what I'll say, it's our turn to eat. And they will say, okay, even though he's a thief, but he's our own thief.
It's our own thief.
Yeah. So that's the challenge. everybody looks as if they put themselves on a stopwatch where they feel like I'm running out of time and I have to grab as much as I can because the system is highly unforgiving and the expectations are also high. I don't get out of this office and I now start looking like a pauper. You know, those are the issues. And you have people that don't even know where to draw the line. You know, so that's the what we need to push back every day for. We need leadership that mirrors integrity, and that's the only way we also start seeing it much more reflecting in the society. Without that, I don't, because everybody wants to reform procurement. Even the procurement law does not give enough power to the executive to be. There's supposed to be a national council for procurement, which was never constituted. Um, but on the obviously, the reality is that that is where the juice is. Until the political leadership wants to tackle that, there's only little we will be able to do.
Right, thank you. Well, as we begin to round up, I did mention that I have a question related to the 2027 election. Because, I mean, it's almost like Nigeria's election is going to take place next month. You know, when when you read the news and so
The
on.
atmosphere.
Yeah. So, what are your greatest fears for the 2026 budget? Yeah.
So, the democracy we run is kind of very challenging. And it's very difficult for you to engineer development if we will run. Because by the time I tell people this 2025 budget is the last budget, is the last bus stop
Before the election.
Before the election. Because whatever you're going to get 2026, because obviously this budget, even right now, the 2024 budget is still running. So obviously, 2025 budget will be extended minimum to middle of 2026. The idea will be right inside the political environment because by that time, obviously, the presidential or the vice presidential candidates will have been selected by the parties if we follow through the timeline in the last election. And so, the only thing you see in 2026 is a highly political budget, which is much more focused about, you know, tokenistic projects just to benefit poor local people or to self-settle interests.
Commissioning boreholes,
and
emergency roads.
See, I was listening to National Economic Council, they said they want to start a world development program. So what's the business of the federal government with the world development program? It's an aberration. You have federal, state, let the local government, it's all political. They were going to choose 1,000 people per ward to empower. And in my head, 1,000 people per word to empower in 8,000 words.
And I think that has also contributed to the lack of accountability across different strata of governance in Nigeria. Every single problem, everybody points at the center, at the president.
And the center doesn't want to share that responsibility.
Exactly.
It seems it wants to continuously
grab more and more power.
It's unfortunate. I think 2027 elections will be keenly contested depending on how the opposition shape out. If the opposition are able to congregate themselves into a single bloc, I think it will be highly contested. I also worry about the fact that it could be highly violent because also because of this devaluation, the size of revenue, the size of amount of money at the center is really huge. And I think a lot of people also don't want anything to disrupt that mechanisms just for their own personal gain. And the same thing until the opposition side. They've seen trillions and billions, not available. Now the tax reform is going to kick in now. The incentive has become so high. And you have people who are they are more politicians than technocrats. I mean, the people in the party ruling right now. So I suspect that the it might be violent in some sort of way. Except that everyone's able to dial down the rhetoric and just follow the due process. And whoever wins, I mean, it's a mandate of nature. Let's just keep moving on. But everybody wants to win. That's it. The interest trend.
Yeah, I think it's a zero-sum competition that we're going to see. Well, let me not take you there because either from the opposition or even from the ruling party, The rhetorics coming out from both ends, unfortunately, is not encouraging.
That's all.
There is no one really talking about the interest of the ordinary person. So, my penultimate question really is on the tax, the new tax law. So much stock has been put into the new tax law, and even how optimistic are you about the implementation of the tax reform law that has been put?
I feel like a lot of times we are using, and I think it's Mr. Tujiladna that said this. We're using technical solutions to fix cultural problems or adaptive problems. We think maybe it's the PIA, it's a legislation problem. Then we go and figure out and get a very big legislation. And somehow, until recently, I think it was president and maybe oil and gas background. That's when that industry is now beginning to get the attention that it actually deserves. But that's an industry that is on a countdown, considering the current advances that we're getting in climate change and renewable energy and the rest. We've not managed that industry well. And even I don't believe much in that PIA. I just think it's just help behind an NPC. It's just right now, maybe the NPC must really be independent. You see, you have to take a professional to come and now lead it. The same thing with the tax. If we pass a law, the fidelity of the government to that law is what's going to be most important. Because a lot of people, the incentive for people to fragment, the first advantage I see with that law is the concentration of the tax collection system. And don't forget that even in the initial bill, the state government were not everything was every of the revenues was supposed to be centrally collected, including the year, everything, so that you can see people from a holistic perspective. Same thing you have in the US. You pay your federal taxes, you pay your state taxes. There's a sharing of information between both handles. But the problem is the fragmentation over the years. And you see that when the final bill came out, the fragmentation started edging it out a little bit. So states were still given the power to take the pay. There's still going to be contestation if states can still take the additional, Lagos State takes consumption tax. What is the fate of that? So I worry that the people that the lawmakers are the lawbreakers. Because the incentive for them to break the law, because of how much money that is available in those fields, is huge. And nobody wants to see that whole power to the Nigerian Revenue Service, as been called. So it's just for us to weigh it out and say, would you have fidelity to this law, considering that elections are coming and all of that is happening? And that's why the president has even extended that all of that should take off in January 2026. That's my bigger problem. I think the law is a step forward. Concentrating tax collection, getting more clearer about the ombudsman, reposition the NRS, which is formerly the NRS. We contributed a lot to that process. We're members of the technical committees of the committee of led by Tawi. We even provided support to the National Assembly for their own oversight. So we didn't get everything we wanted. Obviously, we are civil society, we always be on the ideal side. But at the end of the day, I think it's progress. The question is there going to be commitment to it? We've seen local government autonomy. Would there be? Yeah. That's why I say we're trying to use technical problems
to solve cultural issues.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. So, very lastly, if you could change 3 things in the budget to significantly, reduce the cost of governance and, also promote synergy and proper planning, what would those be? I promise that's my last question.
I think the first thing I would do is every ministry should have a strategy that fits into the national strategy. And don't just give me a budget with a long list of items to be procured. Let it be that this item fits into this strategic objective. If our education is a plan, the mission of education, I say we want to get 20 million children out from the streets and put them in conducive education. And this is the level of literacy, this is the level of numeracy. I want to see items that fit into that strategy. Not just when you just look at the budget and just see a long list of 700 items fragmented to be procured. So I want to see projects aligned with operational strategic objectives. Secondly is the federal government should do federal government things. Federal government is doing local government things. It's doing state government things. I mean, in Oyo, you find that local government chairman wants to build the road. The National Assembly members also appropriated for that same road as constituency project. Um, there has to be a way that the federal government should focus on the big pipe projects, the Lagos Ibadan Express Road, the Lagos Ilesha Road, the Akure Road, the Ekiti Road. Focus on the tertiary education system. Focus on the major things and let state governments understand their responsibility. And you cannot even build an incentive-based system for state government on some certain level of parameters. You know that states are not equally developed, so you could move people. If you move things by 20%, 30% forward, you get this kind of opportunity, this kind of support. Yeah. So those are the kind of things I would want the federal government to do more. Do your focus on your project. Let state government, because now the federal government is abandoning a lot of things. I said they want to do what committee. Let's give state government liberty to use their own spare cash to do whatever they want. The third thing that I want to change in that budgeting process is the detailing itself. Um, a lot of times it's difficult to track those projects because they leave them with vague items, big numbers, research and development, construction of building in some sort of constituency that spans kilometers. So there should be a structure, a framework of documenting budget items that's able to allow citizens to be involved in the tracking process. And I think if you do those three things, it will make no, if I had another extra piece, let the agencies that have mandates do their work. If I were contemplating going to court, there's some certain agencies about to embark on certain projects in the budget, and they do not have the capacity to do that. They do not have the mandate to do that. In the law that establishes them, they don't give them the authority to be constructing roads.
The Ministry of Agriculture should not be constructing roads in a village, because they are not the Ministry of Works.
Exactly. For that even exactly, you will find a school of forestry is doing human rights camp sensitization. Or is constructing a tower a tower in very remote area that is 400, 600, 800 kilometers from this current place. There's a aberration in that system that requires that citizens should push back, government should push back, and National Assembly should rise above his own personal interest and just focus on the people.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Shem.
It's a pleasure
for the time given.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Well, my dear listeners, I'm sure you have really found this conversation to be engaging as well as educating. The budgeting process in any nation is a driver for development. But where that system lacks accountability, where the process lacks proper planning, where it lacks transparency, it can only but be a ritual. And rituals, as we know, does not move us from from where we are to where we desire to be. As citizens of Nigeria also, we do have a role. And that role is that our voices should not be silenced. We should not stop asking the right questions. We should not stop demanding the accountability that our leaders, our elected representatives, should present to us. Also, institutions like the National Assembly have a critical role in this instance. Many years back, I know there were plans to put in place a National Assembly Budget and Research Office. What became of that? I don't know. Proper analysis of our budget, conscientiously, professionally, do it, with the objective of helping to move Nigeria forward before budgets are approved, before budgets are passed and presented to the executive. If the National Assembly is going to keep up with this idea of inserting constituency projects, let there be legitimacy in that particular idea. Involve your people, involve the citizens that you say you represent, and also keep away from conflict of interest. Don't be the person that will put the project and also be the person that will nominate the contractor. Thank you once again. Please like and share this video as well as subscribe to this channel. Until next time, stay blessed.